Hello and welcome. This is one of my 60 conversations, 60 inspirational conversations, no less. And I've got a feeling this is going to be a good one. I have got the wonderful Mandy Spray with me, who I have had the pleasure of meeting in person and spoken to, a few times online too. So I'm really interested in seeing where you're at. We did start to speak before I pressed record, and I said, whoa, wait, let's get this recorded because this sounds like it's going to go somewhere amazing. So Mandy, do you want to tell us a little bit about you, and then let's dive into what we were talking about?
Yeah, I'm just feeling the pressure of inspirational conversation, and it's like,
Oh,
oh no, and then
yeah.
forget that.
Very big pressure on you to be inspirational. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, so cruel. So yeah, I'm Mandy Spray. I live in London at the moment, but I'm from Devon. Didn't know you in Devon, but have met you since. Probably known you about 10 years, 8-10 years maybe.
Probably.
And sort of met you through the world of the three principles and the fabulous world. And recently, I'm a coach, life coach. Recently, I've been exploring the law of attraction more. I mean, I have done for 10-15 years with The Secret, and but I'm really enjoying exploring it more deeply and having fun with it now. And suddenly it's making a lot of sense. And this was partly through Dominic Scafidi and Grace Kelly, who you and I both have done some work with, just seeing the law of attraction and the three principles and how they are saying exactly the same thing, and yet can be different, perceived as different.
Yes.
And I think what I'm doing now is taking the reins more and getting more active in my pursuit of happiness. I don't know where that came from.
I like
but I've always loved exploring. I've always loved working with people and exploring what's going on for them and helping them make sense of life from whatever makes sense to me in that moment. So this doesn't feel like a destination. It feels like a really interesting journey. So I think I can get quite kind of excited about changes that are happening and how I'm seeing things differently. And I'm realizing, I think mentioned it earlier, I'm really interested in the subconscious at the moment, because you hear so many different views on what that means. And is there a subconscious? Is there stuck trauma? Where is it? What does it do? How does it show up? And I'm just sort of, I suppose, confused or just exploring that. So I'd really like that to be part of the conversation, actually.
Oh yeah, let's dive in.
Because part of, I suppose, with the three principles, one of the things that I liked was there's nothing to do. But what that resulted in was me doing nothing. And I wasn't.
Different things, actually, aren't there? There's nothing to do and do nothing. And I think we mistake those things as the same thing, and they're actually not, because I'm really seeing that too, because as you, I'm sure you know, we've bought this piece of land, this agricultural barn, and there is a turn off social media if we're going to change it. But the whole, I think it's that it is the seeing we are whole and complete. There is, to me, it's like there isn't a world to save. There isn't, there isn't anything that we have to do. There's nowhere to get. You talked about this amazing journey we are on, and then it's almost like I see it. I see my grandchildren. I've got 2 grandchildren at the moment, and they'll come and they'll say, oh grandma, should we go and play in the garden, should we do this? And we do loads, but there's nothing to do. We could sit they're not playing on the slide or looking for tractors or running up the lane to do anything other than from the pure joy of that's what they can do. And that's kind of, to me, that's the whole, there's nothing they have to do. They're perfect little children who are growing and doing amazing things. They haven't got to better themselves. They haven't got to make anything. But they're never still.
I know, and that's the thing I think I realise with us as grown-ups, that we're actually never still. I mean, there's always stuff going on anyway in the body, but actually we're never still. And I enjoy rest and I enjoy stillness, but actually there's always things going on. There's inspiration all around us. There's nudges, there's, you know, suggestions. It's coming at us, and I see that as coming. I think I feel more in tune with that kind of universal flow now. I'm more excited to see what inspired ideas I might get. But I think for a lot of years I wasn't even hearing them. I wasn't even aware of them. So it's like, you know, somebody's knocking on the door. It's like, oh, my life's awful. Knocking on the door. I've got a good idea. My life's awful. It's like, open the door. It's like this.
Let me in.
And exactly. And I think that's where the kind of, it looks like the boundary between how I see life and the potential for abundance, whatever, the veil between the two is getting thinner, which is good. And I think what you're saying, you know, that joy doesn't even have to be joy. I mean, it can be, but it can also be just goodness, just a good feeling about what we're doing. You know, I don't joyfully make a cup of coffee in the mornings, but I feel good about making it and spending time to make it just the way I want it. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, the do nothing, there's nothing to do is different. I was waiting for inspiration, waiting for insights. It's like, well, come on, you know, I've been sat here on the couch for 8 hours and nothing's coming. It's like, well, it's because you're not hearing it. You're not in a receiving state. And I think that's been a real biggie for me. To actually, what kind of receiving state am I in? Am I open to hearing something different? And I am more. But this is the interesting bit, I think, that the more rested and inspired I become, it seems, it feels like old memories and old experiences pop up as thought. And it feels like to be released. I had a thought popped up the other day, and it was an old memory, an old traumatic memory that just seemed to appear out of nowhere, and it did feel like it was coming in this direction. And I had this real urge to hold on to it and to give it attention. And part of me was saying, just let it go. It's on its way out. And it's like, but I might forget it. It's like, there's nothing wrong with forgetting it. And eventually it felt like it, and it sounds bizarre, but I was trying to hold on to it, but part of me was saying, no, you need to let go of it. And now I can't remember what it was, which is good.
Yeah.
But also makes me a little bit nervous. It's like, but that defined me. That was one of the things that defined Mandy, that I could talk about as part of Mandy's life. It's like, well, you don't need that. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that is fascinating, isn't it? So what I have been seeing a little bit more for myself recently is the whole, when I came across the principles, one of the first things that really hit me was, this is thought created. And I think the realization is becoming more that I am thought created. Like there is no Deb. Like if you kind of say, so where are you? Are you? Is it your brain? Is it, you know, where actually are you seated? And it's like, I'm kind of not, you know, and I'm fluid and changeable and not fixed. And I'm only fixed in ways, it's like I think myself into being, and then I continue to think myself in that way. So I continue to be in being in that way. And first of all, that was a little bit like, whoa, you know, but I think it came as a realization. I was actually, the word God works for me, but you know, I'm universe, source, power, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But it was kind of like, there's no center of that either. It just is. It is everywhere and it is everything. And there isn't a place where it is. And I kind of had because it's thought the same, you know, it's consciousness, it's whatever this power is, and we are that too. And like you say, so we create ourselves, we define ourselves with these thoughts, and traumas and things like that seem to be thoughts that in some way, this is what's arising inside my head, so I'm just going to share it. It's kind of like we almost feel gleeful about, oh gosh, this thing. And so it's like we use that feels like a center. It feels like something bigger or real or true or something like that. So we sort of hold on to it exactly like, and it defines us. But the truth of it is, and this is what I'm seeing more and more, like you say, if we can just let those things go, even though we are not what we think we are, it's one of those, again, there's nothing to do and do nothing. It's like we're not what we think we are what we think ourselves into being. So it's like if we can let go of those things, if they do arise in that way, and I'm having a similar experience actually, if they do arise in that way, it's almost like old ideas of who I thought I was. And then it kind of comes up and sort of says, well, you're this. And it's like, oh, am I? Oh, and it's an invitation. So, well, I was for a minute. It's like putting on an old pair of slippers or an old coat or something like that. And it's like, oh gosh, yeah, that was me for a very, very long time.
And it feels like, how do I present myself if I don't have these stories? It's the old stories. So who are you? And it's like, well, I'm this miraculous being that's chosen to come down and have a human experience. And it's like, oh, okay, is there anybody else I can talk to? It just feels like it's, and those sorts of conversations are becoming more the norm actually in my world. It's like, what do I do with this? Who am I? And it does feel like sometimes I am this story that I've made up, sometimes I am this story I've made up. But the true who I am is almost, you can't even find words for it. It's that it does feel like this sort of ball of energy that's connected to everything.
Beyond definition, certainly.
It is beyond definition, and it's in a feeling. I was thinking this morning, I was just thinking about, well, this frequency. So if I think about money, for instance, think about money, and then what frequency am I coming at? What words would describe the feelings that I have about money? And I wrote a really long list of unsafe, worried, fearful. And it was like, oh, all these feelings, and I felt quite excited, all these feelings that come with money. And then the next stage was, well, how do you want to feel about money? So then the next list was, I want to feel safe, I want to feel excited, I want to feel in partnership. And I mean, the list just went on and on and on. I could feel the feeling shifting, the frequency shifting. And it's like, okay, so that felt like a doing, but it was a really good doing. It's like, why wouldn't I play with that? Because it feels good. So, and then it was like, when I think about, I don't know, the work I do, what feelings come with that? What frequency? So what am I asking, I suppose, the universe for? So going back to money, if I'm coming from an unsafe, worried, fearful place, the universe is like, oh, okay, Mandy, who we love and adore, she likes to feel worried and unsafe about money, so we'll give her more of that. It's like, okay, so that's how it works. It's not about planning or thinking hard about, I want more money. It's like, what relationship am I in with money? How do I know what it is? From the way I feel. So how do you feel about money? And it's like shifting that at the moment makes sense to me. Not cognitively, but actually letting myself feel. I was in the kitchen this morning, I was looking around the kitchen thinking, all these things that money have bought me. A yogurt maker arrived this morning. Money bought me that. And I was looking at my milk frother and the fridge, and it's just like, oh my God, look at this, it's everywhere. And I can feel appreciation for that, although I struggle a little bit with the word appreciation for some reason. I think that has a funny feeling to it. But I can really be in a state of excitement. Oh, there's your bubbles. your balloons.
Apparently there is some kind of fault on Apple with, I don't know whether it's Zoom or Apple or something, and all my calls that I'm on at the moment, at some point,
I do.
things that go across. Don't know how
Lovely.
what frequency am I in to create
Yeah.
appearing?
And that's the bit that I'm really enjoying at the moment is and recognizing, well, no wonder this is coming into my life.
Yes.
That makes complete sense. And that's always been my thing, is how do I make sense of life, this life? And I am finding it's making more and more sense. What we do with that is the interesting bit, I think. What do I want to create? I want to create a good feeling around money. And I can do that.
Yeah, I love it. And definitely, you know, for me, buying the land and all that was from a realization of, okay, I am a powerful creator. As it, you know, we are, that's who we are part of this energy. And there definitely was a curiosity about, well, what's possible then, you know, where will I come and stop, and where will, you know, what will I see and what will actually unfold miraculously in ways that I was kind of like, wow, you definitely, you know, you've got a great frequency here, you absolutely haven't got stuck here. And yet this, and it continues to surprise me, the places where things just look obvious, and the places where I can feel exactly like you said, you know, when I think about certain things, you know, what actually is the feeling. And I remember this was going back a good few years. I was having some conversations with Beck, and I had a realization about our feelings and things like that, how much she was actually, she's a relatively new driver, and this was a few years ago, and she was a very new driver then. I mean, I think she's been driving for maybe 6 or 7 years, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago, so she was pretty new at driving and quite nervous. And she'd moved from a city down to Devon, and she was talking about some of the tiny little lanes around here, and she sort of said, oh, you know, I'm driving around these tiny country lanes. And she said the words country lanes, but she didn't just, there was more to, you know, she didn't just say country lanes, she said country lanes. So and it wasn't, the word said one thing, but her energy, and like you say, you know, a lot of us will say money, and we might say money, or we might say money, you know, and it's, the word isn't clean. It is and like you say, if we're trying to attract something good, we will attract money, or we'll attract money. It depends where we are at with it. And I just had this realization. I'm like, oh, you're not just saying I'm driving down a country lane. You're saying I'm driving down a country lane. Yeah, there was a lot built into it, sort of thing.
So true. And I think that's part of the issue with texting and messaging and things. We read into it. A friend of mine this morning read out a text from her mum, and this friend hasn't been well, and the text from her mum, as she read it out, she said, and how are you today? And I said, how interesting that that's how you read it out, when it could have been, oh, how are you today? It's like, who knows what the energy is behind it, and we make that up based on our previous experience of that. But I also love, like with your buying the land and building a house, it's like you don't know stuff until you know it. It's not in our little personal minds, the answers to, you know, we bump up against something when it's like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And it could be, oh, I don't know how to do that, you know, end of. Or it can be, oh, I don't know how to do that. And it's true, in here we don't know how to do that, but out here we absolutely know how to do that, and we'll be shown how to do it. And suddenly you do know, and it's like, okay, I'm on the next stage then. And knowing that that will happen is so helpful. It's like, oh, I don't have to know this right now, but I can ask. Like, you know, I can ask for a sign, I can ask for whatever, ask to be pointed to the right person who will show up at the right time. Like I think I put on Facebook last week, we had a leak from the bath through the ceiling. It went through a light fitting, as it does. And all of the stories where plumbers are really hard to come by, especially in North London. You have to wait weeks, they charge a fortune. I could these stories were over here. But it was the smoothest thing that had ever happened. You know, we phoned a plumber who happened to be in the area. He happened to have a couple of hours spare. And cut a long story short, everything was fixed within about 4 hours. And it was like we were in the zone where that was, of course, going to happen. Of course, it was going to be sorted out. There wasn't any doubt in my mind. There were little flavors of this can't happen. What if it's a big insurance job? What if you have to? But none of it. I didn't feel it. I thought it without the feeling. And that's really nice to see, that being the observer of, look at all these old stale thoughts that are popping up, whereas I know it's all going to work perfectly, which it did. And I didn't know this plumber beforehand, and I didn't know how it was going to pan out, but it all panned out. And it just like, it's really hard to describe that, because we can find all sorts of reasons. Oh, it was just coincidence. It wasn't. It was because we were in the frequency of, this is going to get sorted. This will be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And there was no excitement involved in that. It was just a knowing. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I love playing with exactly as you're describing there. I can see areas of my life where that is just, I know that, and it makes so much sense. And then, like you say, with this, the work that you're doing, that you described around money, it's like money for me, one of the reasons that I'm doing this, the land and this, is because money has always been, it's felt like, you know, there's this whole world, there's consciousness, there's oneness, and then there's money.
Yes.
It's something completely different. It's a whole different thing. And to kind of think, okay, so what you know in these other areas around relationships, I'm not saying that I don't ever, you know, get it wrong or do anything like that, but I know what's going on. It's like something I know that, and when something goes wrong, it's like, oh yeah, well, that was obvious. You know, I can see the causes, I can see how it played out, I can see what happened, and it almost feels like in there, like it's just like, okay, well, if you do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, or more, what would I say? If I put my focus here, if I show up like this, if I do this, you know, the outcome is going to be along these lines. If you show up this way or do this, like you were saying about the frequency, you're just in the frequency of, this is going to work out. Okay, maybe you don't know the details of how it's going to work out.
No.
And I can really see that, you know, in relationships, like, yeah, just get into that frequency and this will work out. And yet somehow this money stuff felt very, very different. So it's like, okay, it can't be different. You know, there is, like you say, this is energy, this is consciousness, this is oneness. And I've seen so many things, you know, like with relationships, with all sorts of stuff. I've seen it too. It's been, I know it so well, and it's like, it can't be different. So part of this was like, okay, well, let's put myself in this arena and play this game and see, you know, if you can learn to put your focus where you want your focus to be. If we can, you know, if I am this creator, can I? And I can see, you know, I screwed relationships up for years, and then I learned something different, saw something different, changed my frequency around it, and that is a whole, it's like night and day difference now. So it's like, well, this it's got to be the same. And so many things have happened. Like I can see, again, I'm not saying that I always get it right now, and in fact I get it wrong more than I get it right. I have much more fear in this arena at the moment, but then I can see I had tons of fear around relationships until I got more practice, got more knowing, got more understanding of it. Now it's like, I'm still in fear in places, and I see what gets created out of that fear. It's like, well, it couldn't be any different. Of course you're going to be stuck. Of course this isn't going to, like you say with your plumber, you're in this space of knowing this is going to work out. Well, it can't do anything but work out. Well, when I get into fear around this, it has to screw up into, you know, it has to sort of slow down, or it has to, like you say, oh, Deb wants to worry more about, she likes to worry and about money, we'll give her something to worry about, and along comes
Exactly.
something to worry about. It's like, it couldn't have been, with the energy I was in and the fear I was in, it could not have been any different to that.
Absolutely. And I think it's, the other thing I'm seeing is that I've got everything, I've got enough money for what I want to do right now. Now, I don't have enough money to go on a road trip around New Zealand at the moment. Do I want to go on a road trip around New Zealand at this moment? Well, no. Okay, so there's, the money isn't necessary. You know, it's I think we fool ourselves into thinking, and the fear of lack, the fear of running out and so on. I have never run out. I've got close to it. I've had loans in the past. I've, you know, all sorts of things around money, but something always shows up. And actually trusting that, like, I don't know, the money for the plumber, that was there. The week before, I needed some money to pay off an old loan. The money, I want it on the premium bonds. It's like, well, thank you, okay. So I've started thinking each month, I wonder how much I'm going to get on the premium bonds, or I wonder where the money's going to come from this. I'm going on holiday in May with a friend, and we haven't got accommodation and we haven't worked out travel. And it's like, well, let's just ask and see how it shows up. We don't need to do anything about that right now. So I think that's also, it's not in denial, because that would have felt like denial, but you need to work it out.
And very much
what
like,
are you doing? You're being irresponsible or whatever.
With the build, you know, with where we're going, it's kind of like, okay,
huge.
let's take it a step at a time. Like, there isn't, when you look at what we want to do, we're probably going to need something in the region of 150,000 ish to sort of build the house. And well, you know, like you say, I haven't got enough money for a road trip around New Zealand yet, so that probably isn't as much as it. There's not many. If I wanted to go on a road trip around New Zealand tomorrow, I'm probably not going. That's what, in that sense. But what I see, exactly like you said, when this idea first arrived in my mind, I felt drawn to it. It was like, well, just take the next step. And it was, and that's how we've got this far. It's just like, right now in this moment, we're not doing the first fix of electrics. So I don't need, you know, we're not putting down the concrete base for the house, or whatever base we do for the house. I'm not there yet. We're not doing that yet. So, but like you say, traditionally it would have been, well, you need that money, or you need to know how that money is going to come, you need to know where it's going to come from, or something like this, otherwise you're being irresponsible. And for me, part of this is like, well, I'm just going to I remember reading a Byron Katie book, and she says she lifts up her foot, there is no ground. As she lifts her foot up, the ground appears to meet her foot, you know, as it happens. And it's sort of
I think you're right. And I love that you said about being drawn to it, because I mean, at the moment, I was sort of jesting about New Zealand, because I don't feel drawn to a road trip around New Zealand. So it's like, okay, so what do I feel drawn to at the moment? You know, so it's allowing ourselves to feel a connection to an idea. Like you felt drawn to that. It's like, oh my God, look, this is coming, and I'm interested in it. I want to check it out. I want to give it more attention and see what's going on. And other parts coming up and saying, don't be ridiculous. You're just, it's like that. It's still there. I'm still interested. So actually allowing ourselves to be interested in that, rather than frightening ourselves away from it. And that's where the old patterns, subconscious or whatever, can come up.
And
don't be ridiculous. You don't know anything about building. You're hopeless with money, whatever. So I'm still interested. It's still there. And I love that, because there's a completely different feeling to it, isn't it? And that's where, when Sid talks about follow the good feeling, that's where that makes sense to me. Is, does this feel good? Like the trip to New Zealand, it might be nice, but I don't feel particularly drawn to that. I do feel very drawn to going to the Orkney Islands, actually. I'm just saying that now, so watch this space. I don't know where I'll stay, when I'm going, who I'm going with, anything like that, but I'm interested in visiting the Orkneys. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. Let's see what happens with that. I don't know. And it's almost like, well, why are you even talking about it then? Because in 6 months' time, Deb will be like, what's happening about Orkney? And it's like, oh, I don't know. It's just an idea. It's like, well, who knows?
But when I didn't realize, but when we got to the point, like now I'm talking about the land belongs to us, you know, we're going there, we're doing stuff. It's really surprised me how many people that I have known for like 10 years or more who said, oh yeah, you said that years ago, you wanted to buy a plot of land. And when I think about it, you know, it's been an idea, a little bit like you might say the Orkney Islands. It's been an idea for me for definitely more than 10 years, and probably longer than that. It's been an idea. And I definitely, for me, what I can see is well, that's ridiculous, you're never going to do that, has been stronger than the interest in the idea. And then at some point, it's definitely something I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. And also partly I have had, well, that's ridiculous. Of course you don't want to. And then I would look at, you know, around by where we are, you can drive along and you see these absolutely gorgeous houses that are hewn into the cliff, that have these, you know, beautiful verandas or whatever they are, patios, and they're looking out over the beach and all everything like that. And it's like, well, surely that's what you want, you know, and then they're millions, and it's like, you're a great creator, surely that's what you want. And a little bit like you're saying with New Zealand, I can look at it and think, and it does look nice, and I could make myself fit there if you know, if you like, and be sort of like, well, that's a much more sensible idea to like. That's a much more, and you know, if you're putting yourself out there and saying you're a creator, if you live in this amazing house that is, you know, overlooking the sea with all this stuff that's, you know, worth 10 billion or whatever, it's much better. That's what you want to create. And it's like, well, no, I don't.
I know. And that's the discernment bit, isn't it? I think it's and being willing to keep checking in. How does this feel? Because I was thinking then, I'm with you on that completely with the house thing. It's like, well, what would I want? Because we're thinking of moving at some point, probably up to Scotland, not to the Orkneys, not that far, but it's like, what do I want? And it's like the key words for me are to feel safe, to feel within nature, to be able to see big skies that we don't tend to see in London. So I do start, it's like, you know, dare to be you, but dare to dream.
Yes.
It's actually daring to say, well, what would you like, sweetheart? You know, I know I don't want this. I know I don't want the grey skies of London for much longer. So what would you like instead? Oh, I'd love to have big skies. Would you know where there are big skies? Yeah, where we go in Scotland, there's huge skies. I love them. And it's starting to feel that. So you start to build on that. And then things come in, yeah, you should get maybe something with a sea view, blah, blah, blah. Makes me say, actually, no, I prefer fields. I'd like to be able to see fields and woods. And so it starts to, not that it can't change, but you start to kind of get clearer and clearer and clearer. And that's what I'm saying, is that then starts inviting in the knowing what to do next, what steps to take, who to get involved, because people are showing up all the time. And we don't see them. You had some great stories about, was it somebody turned up on the land, or there were people just showing up who were the perfect people at the perfect time.
It's happened to us so many times with this. It's just been really, really bizarre, and you know, it has. Like I had still got a friend who is also, I've got a couple of friends actually who are building at different stages and doing things. And there's this one guy who I've known for quite some time, and I know he's quite knowledgeable and clever about this sort of thing. And he just, out of the blue, he obviously we hadn't spoken for a long time. We're not close, you know, we don't see each other all the time or anything like that. And he just messaged and said, you know, I'm loving what you're up to. So he'd clearly seen something on Facebook, I think, like this. And then he said, oh, you know, can I come over and see? And he lives South Devon way. So he turns up, and then he's kind of saying, oh, well, I could help you with this, and I can tell you about this. Yeah. And then he's saying, well, I'm too busy to do anything. And then the next couple of days later, oh, I was thinking about this with your land. I've seen it. And it's like, we can't help ourselves, can we?
We can't.
It's
no.
like,
And if we can match something, that's the bit about people love to be asked quite often, especially if it's something they're passionate about.
yeah.
But we don't ask. And then when it came up for me the other day about this nuisance thing, being a nuisance.
Mm.
And I think that's definitely a pattern of mine, not wanting to interrupt or disrupt. And this friend of mine was saying she's like that, even phoning to get her hair cut. So it's like she won't want to bother the hairdresser. It's like, oh, she might be in the middle of cutting someone's hair, I'll do it later. It's like, that's her job. She loves it. She wants you to phone her. She's inviting you to phone her so she can. And it's like noticing when we get to those what I call sticky parts.
Yeah.
It's like an inspired thought, and then something comes in to talk me out of it. And certainly for me, a biggie is don't bother them. Don't be a nuisance. Don't interrupt. Don't disrupt. It's like seeing that is so helpful, because then it's like, am I a disruptor, an interrupter? Of course I'm not. I'm this miraculous being. I'm this like diamond. That's not that. I think I am.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that thinks I am a nuisance. And going out into the world from that place is limiting. And actually noticing it, it's like, oh, it's that old thing again. Just keep going, or stop and smell the roses, whatever you want to do. Nothing's wrong. Sometimes I think it's useful. Sometimes I have stopped and thought, okay, what's this all about?
Yes.
Why am I feeling like this? Where has this come from? Let's make sense of this. So kind of do some work on it, work out, actually, I remember being accused of being a nuisance when I was really young. Was it true? No. It was owned by the person that said that. And this is all metaphor, I know, but it looks like it was owned by the person who said it. They can have that back. Okay, free to move on. Sorted that, free to move on. So sometimes I find it really useful and interesting to stop and consider and do a bit of digging around. I know a lot of people say you don't need to do that. I enjoy doing that. And it does feel helpful. It clears the way.
I want to pick up on something that you said there that I'm really seeing again and again and again. You said, oh, you know, some people say you don't do that and things like this. So what is really coming up for me with everything that's going on, like both of us have been round the principles, the inside out understanding, whatever you want to call it, for like over 10 years, and that has been so pivotal and so helpful for me. And it does feel like there is a little bit of disruption going on with the whole thing at the moment. There seems to be some shift with the being movement kind of growing, and with the creating stuff that Dominic is definitely bringing in and stuff like that. But it feels, and one of the things I actually love about Dominic and actually Steve Hardison with what he's doing is neither of those people make anyone else wrong.
No.
And the one thing that there are so many ways here, you know, I can see in myself, like you said, oh, sometimes it's a sign to just get on with it. Sometimes it's a sign to look and kind of say, okay, well, what is this then? And neither one is wrong nor right. Both are on the table. And in some ways, for me, the knowing yourself and the daring to be yourself is about the discernment of, well, is this one of those times where I just get on with it? There's just you're just wasting time here, just get on with it. Or is this one of those moments to stop and look and see? And neither is wrong or right. It's all on the table. And to me, the key point here is following the good feeling. And so that's my, you know, does it feel good to carry on? Does it feel good to stop? And knowing myself and the discernment that I'm learning, which is it? Because I can see there is so much here, but most religions, if you like, the problem to me that I see in religions is pretty much all of them make every other religion wrong. It's kind of like they say, we have got the one and only way. And to me, it's like, I don't think I do things differently moment to moment, day to day. I haven't got the one and only way. I've got a million ways I do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, so why would we restrict ourselves to one way?
Completely. And I think mentioning Steve Hardison, I think that's really helpful. Who am I being right now?
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes I'm being a terrified 6-year-old.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm being, whatever. And that question is so settling.
Yeah.
But we're talking, I was thinking about, we've got the classic understairs cupboard. There's 4 of us. And so there are 4 people who keep their shoes in the understairs cupboard. And it's such a mess at the moment. I should send you a photo. It's just a big pile of, every time you go in there to find your shoes, you're on your hands and knees. And it's like, well, isn't it funny how we all put up with this? Because it's irritating. And it hasn't occurred to any of us to do anything about it yet. So we put up with the irritation. There's nothing wrong with putting up with the irritation. At some point, one of us will do something about it.
Yep.
And have a good old clear out, and everybody. And it's the same with, so every time I go to the cupboard, I feel this irritation. And with me, every time I don't know, look in the fridge, I feel this irritation of attraction towards something that's not particularly healthy. And I just do that. And at some point I might stop and say, right, let's look at this. Let's look at why you're still having that craving. Do I need a nutritionist? Do I need to look at what's going on in my head? But at the moment, I don't feel the need to do that. So that sounds a bit complicated, but I think it's saying the same thing that you were saying. It's that follow the good feeling. But if something is an irritant, you can do something about it, or you can just wait. It's up to us. I'll give up smoking one day. I don't smoke now, but I did used to smoke, and it was always a case of, I'll stop that one day. And then one day I did.
Yeah.
The same with hoovering. Oh, the carpet needs hoovering. I'll do that at some point. And then I find myself doing it.
Yeah.
But it's all the extra thinking that we give it. I'm so lazy. I should just get on with that. What's wrong with me? And it's all of that that's so, what a waste.
Yeah.
And again, it's not wrong. I love what you said. There's no wrong. And we need to be kind to ourselves and just say, that's just the funk that you're in at the moment.
That's the resistance, isn't it? What we resist persists. And I really am seeing the whole, when I'm pushing and forcing and not being nice and kind to myself, it's actually, it kind of makes a thing like this, and I actually don't get anywhere. Whereas if I'm kind of, okay, what's going on?
And I love that. It's like, don't assist or resist. So if it's a painful thought coming in, don't assist it by giving it loads of attention, and don't resist it either. It's finding the sweet point,
there is a balance. There is absolutely a balance. And that's kind of what I see, like when you were saying even about carrying on and stopping. It's and I see when I'm working with people who have been in abusive relationships, which I do sometimes, like usually their patterns are around victimhood and people pleasing. And so if you're kind of over there in victimhood and people pleasing, you point them in the direction of bullying and standing up for yourself.
That's right.
Very often people pendulum swing and go all the way over there because they've been here in this place for so long. As they start heading in this direction, they hit the beautiful place of balance and keep going.
Yes.
But it is like you say, at some point then we kind of swing, and I can look back at my journey and kind of think, yeah, I was here, then I went to here, we're sort of like trodden all over, walked all over. Who do you need me to be? What is it to? And to, nobody's ever going to tell me anything ever, to do.
Yeah.
And then sort of back and forwards a little bit, almost like that. And then there is this beautiful place of seeing there is a balance between And that is so true of so many things, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's a full
so true. It's funny you reminded me. I caught myself recently. I work with at the moment I've quite a few young people in their 20s, and there's one young lad who's really seeing this manifesting stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. He's teaching me so much. But he came to me with anxiety and kind of OCD behaviors, if you have to label them. And I found myself the other week wanting to ask him how they were now. And it's like, why would I do that? You know, it's like he hasn't mentioned them for ages, because we're on a completely different trajectory. And I was thinking about it after. I thought that was my insecurity came up, and it's like, oh, we should be talking about the issue. And you know, I trained as a nurse and social worker and then a homeopath, so my job was always to look for what was not working and start at that point. Yeah. So if it's health, you look for the symptom or what's not working. Whereas, and I realized that's what I'd gone into a sort of old comfort zone. Let's talk about your anxiety. It's like, wow, there's still a temptation to do that. And often, yeah, people often come to us initially with something like that because there's a discomfort. But then talking to that magical part of them, showing them that we know that they're not broken or damaged or anything, is just what a gift. But yeah, I caught myself. It's like, that was interesting. A little like, oh, something saying to me, you sure you shouldn't be bringing that up? It's like, why would I do that?
And I guess a part of it is like you say, seeing that for what it is, and seeing that we don't have to, you know, Sydney Banks, we don't have to listen to any thought we don't want to ever. And it is seeing, oh yeah, that's one of those again that I just don't have to listen to. And seeing, I had a call with Jamie Smart the other day actually, and had a really, really nice call actually for one of my 60 conversations. So if you haven't seen that, do go find it. It's a really good one. And he was talking about something, and I've heard this. I've heard this talk that he was talking about that Sydney Banks gave. I can't remember, and I do need to find out what it is. But in this talk, Sydney Banks was talking about the first frame of reference and the second frame of reference.
Right.
It's like he talked about basically we're spiritual beings, like you said, we're just little balls of energetic love, connection, you know, whatever words we can put onto it. And then we're born into this humanness for a while, whatever. We come here, we come into form in this way. And I can really see it, like watching my grandchildren. They're having to learn to be human. You know, they're having to learn all these limitations on themselves. I know we're human from birth, but you definitely see that we are the closest to our spiritual nature when we're first born, and we're not aware of any of our limitations. And then we're made, you know, my grandson is now 4, almost 5, and my granddaughter is 2 going on 3, and I can see already what they've learned, and it's kind of cute and sweet and funny, but equally you can see, you know, they've learned to be human. And what Sydney Banks was saying was like that becomes our first frame of reference. And this is those things that you were talking about, these old habits, what we've learned, what we know about being human, what we've worked out, you know, about being here. And then I don't know if he actually said this, but this is what I have made up about it, if you like. It's like he said his enlightening moment was seeing his spiritual nature again, and kind of going, oh, so I can actually live not in this first frame of reference, this humanness, which is so obvious to me in this form, but I can actually live from this second frame of reference. And I think that is this whole conversation we've been having. It's like we are exploring what is this second frame of reference, because, you know, if you go to something like building a house, the first frame of reference, like my very humanness, we've been going to build shows a few times, and like I've been reading magazines, and all of them kind of ask questions, you know, like, okay, so what is your budget? Do you need to get a loan? Like that, the certain things that they assume, because you're in this situation, you're a human being, this is how it works, this is what you're going to do. And it's kind of like, yeah, I kind of don't fit into that any of these boxes, because I'm living from or leaning into and learning to live more and more. Oh, I just got a thumbs
I know.
up.
Well, it's coming from a very different place, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm reading stuff at the moment about, third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth, and the third dimension part, which is all about right and wrong, black and white,
Yeah.
Truth and non-truth, and it's all very sort of binary, and that wanting to say I don't know, or I'm on the fence on that one. We've kind of been told that's the wrong place to be, where actually I'm seeing more and more it's a wonderful place to be. Until you come to a fork in the road, and it's like, oh, time for a sit down and a rest, because I'm not sure which direction to take. So I'm going to sit down, have a drink, whatever, and then at some point it will become obvious which one. And I think the intuition bit interests me, because a question that I often get asked is, how do you know it's intuition? How do you know that it's an inspired thought? And then you realize that so many of us are so cut off from our feelings.
Yeah.
The word spiritual bypass, or the phrase spiritual bypassing, seems to be coming up a lot at the moment. And it's like we ignore this amazing body and the senses that we have, whether it's 5, 6, 7, but actually getting in touch with that and really allowing ourselves to feel our way through life is, I think, the challenge of the age, really. It's like, can you feel that, and can you be okay with feeling that, even if it's really, really uncomfortable, full of shame, remorse, guilt, or whatever. It's like, they're horrible feelings. There's no getting away from that. It feels awful. Of course we don't want to feel it. But actually, when we can start not being frightened of that and almost become the observer of those feelings, that's what I'm finding more and more. It's like, oh God, look at me doing shame again.
Yeah.
That's a really, oh God, that feels really uncomfortable. And it's like, it's okay, sweetheart, it won't last, or whatever. There was a reason for me saying all this. But I think it is into that helping people feel their way through life, feet on the ground for sure, because we're human and we need to be in these bodies, but we want to feel our way through. We can't just, well, people can, of course, but it didn't work for me to just go into my imagination and daydream my way out of a situation. What I need to do is get back in my body, feet on the ground, go for a walk, do some stretching, do some dancing, whatever. And, true holistic stuff. Sorry, 5% battery. We've only got a few minutes, so we'll be all right.
That's probably a good thing, because I could keep talking to you all day.
I know, but it is it's the whole thing, isn't it? Yes, we're spiritual beings, definitely. We also have these human. That's right. You were talking about little kids, and when they first discover their hands, and it's like, oh my God,
I know.
look at that. And I don't know if you've ever done that as a grown-up, but it's a really lovely thing to do. Just sit and study your hand and fall back in love with it and in amazement with it. But particularly, I mean, I'm 64 now, things are changing. There are more, what do they call them, liver spots or something. Things are changing, and it's like, wow, look how that's changing. So if we can become more enamored with our bodies, they're going to serve us much better.
I can definitely see I have really watched myself fall in love with I mean, my hair was my thing. I hated my hair for years. And then it was a conscious decision. It was like, my hair is clearly curly. And it's like I was fighting it, and trying to make it into something that it wasn't. And it was just like, okay, you need to just love it and accept it, and at least see, what happens from there. I absolutely love my hair now.
Isn't that lovely? You made a conscious decision there.
Yeah.
From pain, wasn't it? From feeling this isn't nice.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel nice. It doesn't. And it's like, well, what do you want? It's like, well, I don't want to hate my hair anymore. I kind of quite like to love it, but maybe start off with thinking it's okay, and then see where it goes. You were willing to get on that path. Brilliant.
Exactly. And the same, I think, with my body as well. It's kind of like there are plenty of things that, when I was younger, I wanted to change. I wanted them to be different. The embracing of my amazing body just as it is, like you're saying. And I love just being an observer. This might sound really, really strange, but like I'm in the kitchen and I'm making a cup of tea or making dinner or something like that, and I'm just noticing all the doing that's going on. And it's, you know, it's kind of my,
me too.
I'm chopping, I'm going to the fridge is being opened, this is getting out, this is coming, and I'm watching this, and it's like, wow.
I know. I think that's a really, no, me too. And it's so good to do that. You can do that, or sometimes I'm like holding my breath, just doing stuff with no awareness at all. And it's like I'm catching myself with that. It's like, you know, sleep apnea, your email apnea, chopping carrots apnea, whatever. It's like breathe, and the other side of that is just to be amazed. It's like a ballet, isn't it? It's like, look at nobody could choreograph this.
The dance of life. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I could carry on with this for ages. I could just keep talking to you all day.
Me too, Deb.
So if people want to reach out to you, want to know more about you, where can they find you? It's
a simple website address, mandyspray.com. So I've got a website, and there's ways to get in touch there. And I'd love more people to subscribe. I think I'm going to go over to Substack soon. I'm feeling the pull, but at the moment people can subscribe to my mailing list, and I write sort of little stories and reflections on life and try and make sense of life. So they don't happen a lot, maybe once a month, once every couple of months, but quirky little stories about plumbers and things will be on there.
Cool.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions or want to get in touch, that'd be lovely.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Deb, for this. It's brilliant.
Really enjoyed that. That's been amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, let's talk again.
Yeah, let's.
All right. Thanks a lot. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.